takes plotting, which can be so overwhelming, and makes it easy. In book 2, I thought, what kind of image are we looking for? I did not really expect myself to come as far as I have. November has been pure chaos. I can't stop it. I can't control it. I have no choice but to just go along with it. Go with the flow, which I'm not good at doing. Anyway, I have a ton of editing work on my desk. I also have a ton of self-imposed writing deadlines to work around. And those are becoming very disturbing, very anxiety-inducing. I have officially started to have nightmares about not accomplishing these goals, and that's usually when it means I need to sit down and properly get focused. So that is what today is all about. Writing, I've known this about myself for years. I am not the kind of person who can just sit down for 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there, 10 minutes there, and just write a few words. I need an entire block of the day. It's a whole thing. And unfortunately, November has not been accommodating in the way of giving me blocks of time to work with. Either way, I thought it would be fun to dedicate a nice, long Friday afternoon to focusing on my work, which I very much need to be doing. Also, I have been hosting Write With Me live streams on my channel every other Wednesday. So on the Wednesdays I don't post a video, I will be hosting a live stream, and that has been very conducive to me getting work done as well. So I will be doing more of that. But for now, I need to make myself a coffee and sit down and actually get some work done, and I will save all of my writing related updates for some time later in this video. Let's go. We're back with more sighing. There has been a lot of sighing in today's video so far. Also a lot of red. I'm feeling very festive and very Christmassy. Anyway, it has been exactly a week. Last Friday ended up being a very successful writing session, and I'm so happy that I decided to delegate an entire afternoon to focusing on my writing goals, because little did I know, for the next 7 days, I would have no time for my writing goals at all. Yesterday was Thanksgiving, so there was a little bit of a to-do with all of that. We didn't do much around here. We just didn't really celebrate. To be honest, a lot of us in our family have very drastically different and extreme diets going on. We've got vegans, we've got carnivores, we've got people who are regular vegetarians, people who are super allergic to corn, like just a lot of dietary stuff going on, and it just made more sense for us to not really do anything. I ended up spending, I think, pretty much all of last week focusing on this edit. I in fact have it in front of me because I wanted to report to you what a manuscript assessment looks like when it's coming from me. So I finished the manuscript assessment. I am prepared to proofread it and send it off to the client tomorrow morning. The final report was 7,741 words and 25 pages. So that client is definitely getting her money's worth. If you're interested, a manuscript assessment is basically the first tier of editing services that I offer, and to me it is just such a great catch-all for somebody who doesn't really know where to go in terms of hiring an editor. The manuscript assessment is basically a read-through and report. So I will read through the manuscript usually twice, and then I compile a report that's basically an edit letter that just covers everything. This is actually through a firm that I work for, so I don't even have contact with this client, but I will be sending it back to the company that I work for tomorrow. And for this afternoon, that means I finally can take a little bit of a breath. I have definitely started to have hints of eye strain. Eye strain is such a real problem for me. This is kind of a gross story, but for some reason I'm gonna go into it. A couple of years ago, I had a really intense developmental edit that I worked on. I actually ended up adding about 30,000 words of my own editorial input into that project. I put my back into it, I loved it, but I don't think that I actually even took a day off for about 2.5 weeks. And I took my dog out to go poop. And when she did, my eye strain was so bad I couldn't even see where to pick it up. Eye strain is real for me. It is crazy how after I take a break, it just goes away. I have been having little hints, little tidbits of eye strain, and I want to avoid more eye strain. So I'm not gonna be writing as much as I actually feel motivated and like I could write. I think I'm better off plotting instead. What I'm going to be doing is actually focusing on book 3 in my current sci-fi series. So if you're new here, I actually have a copy of my book. This is my one and only published title, When Stars Burn Out. I am currently working on its sequel, and I'm so close to having it finished. I have set the goal for myself that it will be done by the end of December. So we're in crunch mode over here. I also, like very many people, decided to take a step back from NaNoWriMo as an organization and embark upon my own November challenge. If you watched my video on this, you will know that I have been doing what I have been calling Plovember, plotting in November. This afternoon, I hope to achieve that goal, which is completing the plotting process for book 3 in this adult sci-fi post-apocalyptic dystopian series. So I've talked a little bit about how I don't perceive an outline and plotting to be the same thing. For me, an outline is more of just an amalgamation of all of the different thoughts, ideas, potentialities, like just the overall scope of the story, whereas the plot actually has structure. The plot requires thought, if you will. I did host a live stream yesterday. What day is it today? Oh, it's Friday. I did host a live stream 2 days ago on Wednesday. And during that live stream, I sat down and I started to actually plot this book a little further. I have an interesting strategy when it comes to plotting in that it's sort of like I start off with an outline, and my outline is gargantuan. My outlines are often 30 to 50,000 words long, and that's because I sort of ease in and out of not only just discussing my overall ideas for the story, but I will include actual scenes, actual snippets of dialogue, and actual character descriptions, and actual setting descriptions. For book 3 in this series, I do not have quite that extensive of an outline. I think it's around 10,000 words, which for me is relatively short. Does that mean that I can't start plotting it? Absolutely not. In many ways, I have an outline and a plot going in tandem. Once I feel like I'm running out of steam with my outline, I will go ahead and start plotting. Once I start plotting, hit a wall, I'll go back to my outline, and between those two things, I will eventually figure out what the hell is going on. One thing that I've been really spending a lot of time on is envisioning what I want the opening image to be for this book. So I kind of have this interesting obsession with contrasting the beginning visual of a book with the ending visual of a book. So think the Shire in The Lord of the Rings, and then Mount Doom. The beginning and the end. I like to have them differ as much as possible. And I like to also have them have little tidbits of theme and symbolism. When it comes to sci-fi, a lot of people think that it's just cold, hard technology, and it really isn't. I would say sci-fi actually is quite fantastical. Like, think about Dune. Dune is sci-fi, but I think it's very fantastical, and that's why it has so much appeal, is it isn't hard sci-fi. And this series definitely is not hard sci-fi. I've had countless readers come to me and say, hey, I picked up When Stars Burn Out. I'm not a sci-fi person, I'm not a dystopian person, but this read like fantasy, which is a huge compliment because that was really the intention all along. I think if you go about sci-fi in a certain way, then you can evoke a certain feel. And for me, my sci-fi is not hard sci-fi, it's soft sci-fi, and it's filled with a lot of beautiful prose, a lot of beautiful description, and I think that that kind of gives it a fantastical feel. Sorry, my battery died. Anyway, what was I saying? So, for example, When Stars Burn Out begins in a spaceship setting and ends in a post-apocalyptic Earth setting, and that can be very overwhelming. The post-apocalyptic Earth setting is brutal and grotesque, and it's hard, and it feels like it's just all edges. It's very cutthroat. And I felt like readers would probably want a break from that. So in book 2, I thought, what kind of image are we looking for? Are we looking for a breather? Are we looking for something that feels a little bit like a refreshment? And from my perspective, yes, we want a refreshment. So what I did, and this happened kind of organically, like it was necessary to have a 3 POV narrative, but what I wanted to do was make sure that each of these POVs was stationed in a physical setting that would offset the other settings. So we have one POV that is in a space setting, one POV which is in a more modern day civilized setting, and that's the refreshment part of it. It's sort of like this community that has been able to reindustrialize itself despite the apocalypse, and that has been so nice to write. And then of course we have the final POV, which is in the post-apocalyptic Earth setting. Everything is still very brutal. Everything in fact is like as bad as it could get. Because I'm cycling through all of these different POVs, it's not overwhelming the reader with one specific image, energy, or mood from start to finish. We're sort of giving them moments to come up for air for some comedic relief and then to dive back down into the depths of hell when necessary. For me, when it comes to writing a book, the very first thing that comes to mind is this particular image, is this visual, this mood, this energy for the book. So as I go about plotting book 3, I have been thinking what I specifically want this to look like. And then, like I said, I like to contrast that with the ending. So once I get a good feel for what I want this to look like for the most part, I kind of know how I want it to end visually as well. I don't know, this is such a weird process now that I'm saying it out loud. This is the part of the video where I need to insert the disclaimer that this is just the way that I prefer to write. I am a very prosy writer. I love description, I love prose, I love flowery language. I'm that kind of a writer, and I'm also that kind of a reader. So once I have an outline, like an overall idea for what I think needs to happen in the book, I then start to envision the energy or the mood of the book. I like to think about how that is going to stack in the series. How does book 2 differ from book 1? And how does book 2 stand when it's sandwiched between book 1 and book 3? What does book 3 bring to the table that the reader is going to want? It's sort of like planning out a meal, a 5-course meal. Like, what order should we put this all in so that it's the most palatable and appetizing? Now that I've got a better idea as far as the visual and the mood and the energy for this book, I have started to actually sit down and plot it out. Now, when it comes to plotting it out, I like to stick to the basics, and I'm talking basic plot points, story beats, pinch points, that sort of a thing. I'm going with the bare minimum. Years ago, I put together this workbook, and I love it because it was a resource that I had created for myself and then for my editing clients, and I thought, I'll give it to my patrons as well. And I use it to this day. So it has a couple of pages that focus specifically on creating a premise and then focusing on the designing principle. My favorite section of the workbook, however, is just the basic save the cat beat sheet plot structure. And this to me is almost effortless to figure out. Like, let me tell you, it takes plotting, which can be so overwhelming, and makes it easy. So basically, I love this visual. I'm clearly a visual person, but this is like the save the cat beat sheet visual. So I've got the opening image, the theme, the catalyst, break into 2, B story, fun and games. Like, I've got all of the basics here in this workbook, and I basically just go through them in sequence and answer those questions. What would happen at the midpoint? How would that change the game? How would that change everything? All of these things are a little bit easier too, I think, when you're writing a sequel, because there's a lot of setting and world building that's already established and you don't have to go through all of that again. But basically what I'm going to do today is answer all of these questions and get these things figured out for myself. When I have them figured out, I consider that book plotted. That being said, as I already discussed in a previous video that I will tag in one of these corners, I tend to focus on writing an outline, writing out a plot, writing the first draft, which is always very self-indulgent, always very long, always very filled with fluff. And then in subsequent rounds of revisions, I carve the plot out from there. So it is kind of reverse engineering plot ever so slightly. But if I start off with an actual plot, then carving that out later down the line is easier because I'm starting off with the essential building blocks that forge plot in the first place. With all of this being said, I am now losing my voice. Like, I properly might actually be getting sick, and I hope that that's not true. I really hope that that's not true. But I feel very tired. I feel very much in need of a strong tea. So we're gonna make ourselves a tea. We're gonna sit down. We're gonna bust out my own workbook that I created for myself, and we're gonna plot the rest of this book. Let's go. Different setting than normal. I usually prefer to not record anything in the truck. By the way, it's on. I'm gonna turn it off. No need to have the truck on. I was originally out gathering some beautiful footage of the fall foliage here among the sycamore trees and by the creek, which I'm sure I will include in this vlog. However, there were a number of strange people wandering around today that just made me feel a little uncomfortable. So I decided to just retreat to the safety of a locked vehicle. The priority here, Anna, is not beauty, not cinematic masterpiece, okay? This is something that I have to constantly tell myself. We are here to provide you with essential updates. So let's go ahead and dive into those. It is now December. I began this vlog back on Friday, November 22nd, so it's been a week and some days. I did not really expect myself to come as far as I have in that amount of time. My Plovember goal was to finish outlining and plotting book 3. And I'm happy to announce that I achieved that goal. I can't believe that just over a month ago, I literally had no idea how book 3 was going to go. And it was just like, every time I thought about it, I was drawing a blank. I genuinely had no idea how that story was going to go at all, how it would begin even, let alone how it would end. I'm starting to realize that I probably, on a subconscious level, needed to know the way that book 3 went in order to finish book 2. And if you've been with me on this journey for any amount of time, you know that I have been struggling to finish book 2 for a very long time. A very, very long time. But now that I know what happens in book 3, it has made writing book 2 so much easier, which is weird because I know exactly what happens in book 2. I have every single scene outlined for the rest of the draft, but I think I was nervous about potentially writing myself into a corner or publishing this book without any idea as to what happened in book 3 and having that backfire in some way. Now that I know for a fact how everything is supposed to go, I feel so much more comfortable wrapping up this part of the book. And I'm actually really excited to write book 3. Long story short, Plovember goal achieved. And I also have been doing a lot better with writing and actually getting new material written. That being said, we are now in December. This is literally the last month that I have to finish this book. My battery died again. If I have one complaint about this camera, it's that the batteries do not last very long. Anyway, moving on. It's now December, which means I officially only have 1 month left to hit my self-imposed deadline of finishing this draft before the end of the year. And I still have a lot of writing ahead of me. I think I worked out the math and it's going to be about 3.5 chapters a week that I need to finish if I want to finish everything that I already have outlined, which is assuming I stick to the outline and to all of these scenes that I've put together, which I should. I think I will. I am vaguely nervous about how all of this will pan out. I am nervous that somehow, some way, I won't be able to finish this book before the end of the year, which will feel like a catastrophic letdown. Like, I can't allow it to happen. I honestly would prefer that I just finish a draft, even if it's like super messy towards the end, rather than not having anything to show for the goals that I've made for myself this year. But at the same time, I know myself well enough to know that I'm not the kind of a person, I'm not the kind of a writer who is comfortable with just writing a bunch of crap for the name of writing a bunch of crap. So we'll see. I'm going to be treading a very fine line here of churning out first draft material in the name of finishing this deadline, but keeping myself in check and making sure that I'm still producing quality work. I think I have a chance because, again, I already have all of this outlined, so it's not like I have no idea as to what I'm supposed to be working on throughout the rest of December. I fully do. But anywho, I'm rambling. I'm just excited to switch gears and start working on the end of this book and to have book 3 fully mapped out. I do still plan to take a break in January from this series and to focus more on writing the first book in my fantasy series. And I would love to really finish at least the first draft, I would say before June of next year. I'm pretty decent with churning out a first draft. It's the final drafts that I get really neurotic about. But I don't know, I've grown a lot as a writer, and I have found that my first draft material is way, way, way better than it used to be. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up and say that I will see you guys next week, hopefully on Wednesday. I'll let you know. Be sure to check the community thing, like the community tab on my YouTube channel, because I provide updates there every week as to whether or not I will be posting. So or doing a live stream, whatever. As a side note, if you're interested in receiving more updates and more behind the scenes kind of content from me, like newsletters and that sort of a thing, check the link down below for Patreon. I know that Patreon typically is a paid thing. It's like a subscription service, but it has opened up to allow people to join as free members, and I post free content all the time. I use Patreon for my newsletter. I use it for absolutely everything. It is like my one-stop shop for polls or AMAs or anything you can imagine. I love Patreon. It is like such a multifaceted, wonderful platform, and I find it to be very user-friendly. Everything is sent directly to your email. It's just great. So if you're interested in getting a newsletter from me and everything else, go ahead and check that out. You can join for free. Okay, friends, I hope you have the absolute best beginning to December, and I will check in with you guys as soon as I can. Bye!